to tell us where we're at, where we're gonna be?
Well, I mean, when we were hoping to have around $130,000 a month. We were hoping that our calculations were off, but they came, the local option sales tax from the county trustee came in at $91,000, which was quite a bit. Let me know real quick that the original calculation was correct on the 60-day turnaround. So looks like our projections, like I said, as far as that goes, are not going to be met for sales tax. And I put mine in your projection. I sent them out. Does everybody have a copy? I'll, yeah, I have one here. Okay.
Anybody else need one of these?
Do you have one?
I do.
Okay. There's Mr. Hall one. And looking up as far as the revenues, what I calculate is coming up short. If I can get my pages together. Is $326,991. Granted, you take into consideration what we've saved or what we plan on saving. If our current expending trends stayed the same as they have so far this year, we would come in $81,561 under projected expenses, bringing our shortfall to $214,516. The difference between Donna's and mine were primarily the 911 EOC bill for $37,000, and then the in-service pay of $22,800. One was for fire and one was for police. That's already been paid, and I'm 99.9% sure we'll pay that $37,000. So that's primarily the difference between our numbers. We have some differences here and there, but for the most part, that's the biggest difference. I guess the main thing is we've got 3 months to balance, and I think it's good that we're looking at it now. I think there's been a couple of things pop out. I've got a few ideas, but I want to turn it back over to Donna and see if there's anything needs to be added to those numbers.
Well, I did want to ask, are we going to have a problem in May when we have 3 payrolls?
I believe we'll make those 3 payrolls without any issues.
Okay. Well, basically, we have spent almost all of the school facilities tax in the unassigned category. So to my way of thinking, we have the cash flow problem, which if we squeak by in June, we probably are not going to make it in. We definitely will not make it to November, because last year between July and November, we spent $400,000 more than we took in. So there's that issue. And then because we did the stabilization fund for the reserves, we have that $360,000 to make up. And we spent 250,000 more in unassigned this year than we bought in unassigned. So we have multiple problems that have to be addressed from my perspective. How we go about doing that is open. Does anybody want to discuss their suggestions, or I have a view? Tom has a view, I hope.
Yes, I would like to discuss getting through this fiscal year, and I do think, I don't know if I'm quite ready to unveil it, but I do believe I'm ready to swing for the fence on our future financial outlook. And I think we've got some things in the works that can set us, get us going in the right direction very quickly. But just putting some of the things you've brought up, and I was totally against messing with the state street aid money, but I do think that's an option. But looking at it, if we go about it the way our audit goes, now, you know, I'm gonna pass this sheet out just so everybody can kind of, everybody I think knows where we are, but I don't think anybody has this, but this is from February 28th. What we've got to do, what we've got to get is where we're living out of this unassigned general fund balance, which we've been carrying a negative the majority of my tenure. I think we've been in the black 1 month, which that's where we've got to go to. So if we're in the negative over here, that means we're drawing from one of these other funds to pay our bills. So in all these other funds, the reason they're not in unassigned is because they're supposed to be spent in other areas. So I think that needs to be a primary focus going into next year's budget, is how we're going to get that to zero, and then how we're going to get that to 360,000 per our stabilization plan. As far as getting to the end of this year, this general fund school facilities tax, it seems like that, you know, right now, the audit and the state are okay with letting us show that as general fund monies, but in reality, that money's under contract. We really need to separate it. We really need to quit using it. So, with that said, there's two options I have come up with as far as, I've got to find my sheet. There it is. If we're just wanting to make up the $214,516 deficit, I recommend we sell the property out on Deer Ridge for $200,000, and we make $14,000 in cuts. Now that right there will balance our budget, but we also have to take into consideration last year we got hit with a $70,000 AP. And so, you know, I wanted to forecast about $65,000–$70,000 for AP this year, so that doesn't catch me off guard. If we are trying to balance the unassigned to zero, we would have to come up with $396,788. If we were going to do that, I would say sell the property on Deer Ridge for $200,000. Take $152,852 out of the state street aid payroll and move that. Take it from highways and streets. Take it out of the unassigned and move it into state street aid. That would add us an additional $153,000 into the unassigned fund. And then we'd have to come up with an additional $42,936 in cuts. That would get us at zero for we're taking into account the unassigned balance.
And just so that the citizens understand, it is legitimate to spend the I never can say it, state street aid money for salaries for those people who work on the streets. So that's what he is referring to.
Yes, and we really want to get our salaries out, and I don't want to do that because we need to be paving streets for that money.
Right.
But anyway, that is an option.
My suggestion was to Tom that we do that for this year, which is the 152,000 he's talking about, and for next year. And then our plan would be to go back to having all of those funds for paving streets. And I know we already have big needs in the street department, but it's one of our options. Increased property tax would be my suggestion for at least 2 years to get our reserves back. Or we could increase property tax for park services only and pay the park staff out of it and use that for whatever anybody else wants in the parks. You could label that increase for whatever the board deems a good plan. We could get an advance on the property tax. I forget what it's called. Yeah. That would help us with the cash flow for the first 4 months. And then the special census, did y'all ever get any? Okay.
My feel on the special census is pretty strong because I voted for it in the past. So, as I think I've quoted before, if we have at least 1,000 increase in population, we're looking at $100,000 we're leaving on the table for the state to keep until our population is known by them. Plus a $25,000 state street aid would come into that play too. It's per capita. I would like to see us go forward with a state street aid either in late September, early October. Primarily the weather's still good, but that gives us a chance for the influx of people will buy up hopefully the new houses that are built this summer, because people usually like to move into a new school district before school actually starts. So that'll give us a chance to get the population up somewhat at that point in time.
You mean go forward with this special census?
Special census, yes, ma'am, sorry. And I think that we can do that with the help of our police department, fire department, and some citizens. I know I'll be willing to get out there and try to, help collect it. And that is the cheapest way to do it, as I've found out from other cities within our own county. Franklin, Spring Hill, Thompson Station, Nolensville, Brentwood have all already had special census. And that's just was the input that they gave me, was that it's a wise idea to go forward with it, and I think Tom and I have discussed maybe waiting until 2016, but that would hinder on whether we can survive until then. So,
is there any way for us to tell the difference between the property tax invoices that we mailed out in 2010 versus now? Would that give us an idea of the increase?
I was talking to Brad Coleman this afternoon, about another thing, but we got into that discussion. One thing that he is liking about Fairview is that the people there is now a trail that he can follow according to what our sales are and what, as far as the sale price for homes. He said that's gonna make the process a lot easier for them to do the appraisals. And if appraisals are up, our property taxes will be up. But that's an unknown at this point in time. So we may have a little bit of an increase there, but I can't see it being the amount of increase that we will really be needing, so.
Is he gonna do one sometime soon?
They'll be done by springtime. He said maybe even in the fall.
Okay.
But the other communities or the other cities within our county has already moved forward with a special census. So we're kind of the one that's kind of laid back on it and not doing anything about it. So, but you're looking at possibly if you have 1,000 increase of population, you're looking at $125,000 that we're leaving them. And as far as the expense of getting it done, I just feel that's an investment, because once it's done, you pay for it. Then from here on out, you still got that per capita income.
So I guess the thing to do is to identify what we really think the problem that we have to solve.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a consensus on that?
I think $1 million will go a long way. I forgot a piece of document. I
Okay.
apologize. I'll do it.
But if there's any other questions, maybe on the special census, I've looked into it pretty good. And I think when we done one in 2006 was when we done it ourselves, and then the federal government done it in 2010. So we'll be awful close to a 6-year gap in between.
Well, I think surely we can get enough citizens and the fire department and whoever else.
I think Thompson Station done theirs for 30.
And that's
Spring
with
Hill-
them doing it themselves?
Yes, ma'am. And Spring Hill hired a consulting firm that did theirs was 70. So, we could save better than 50% if we do it ourselves.
So are we going to try to do what we did last year, which is break even at the end of the year and not worry about the school facilities tax?
We do have a payment coming out of that we're going to have to save in there, keep in there, and that is the payment for the library.
The 60,
Yes, ma'am.
2,000?
Whatever that amount was, we've delayed that until the finish of the project.
I think we're okay still with that amount coming out. Brian, do you have an opinion?
Now, I like the census thing, and I guess my question on it is, how long does that take, to perform, and then when does that change go into effect? How long are we looking at before you reap the benefits of doing that?
That's the questions I haven't got answered yet. So Frank is trying to get into their system to let us know those particular answers, and those are great questions, and I've had those same questions myself, so.
Yeah, because
But as far as it taking, I think we can perform it in about a 30-day span as far as, getting our part together, as far as the population goes.
Do we still have a hiring freeze on?
I would say so, yes, ma'am. I've only replaced who I had to replace so far. Holsinger hasn't been replaced. The other one I didn't replace, the IT person.
We might need to replace the IT person.
It's up and going.
Have we gotten the,
I made the call to the right person this time.
have we got the video up and going
Yes,
yet?
ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am. I was assured, they checked it this morning, they checked it again this afternoon, so we're still cautious. But I made the call to the manager in Memphis, and instead of putting us off till the 30th, he had them in here the next morning at 10 o'clock.
so is that a permanent fix, or is that going to cost us money?
As far as I'm concerned, it's a permanent fix.
Okay, unless something else breaks.
As far as the warranty goes on that, these warranties that are there are not warranted by them, they're manufacturer's warranty. So if something does break down, they send it for repair, and that's according to the way the warranty is written. So that was what took so long on this particular piece of equipment that went out. And so we were trying to do everything we could to get it up and going, but we didn't have we had the people that knew how to punch the buttons, but we didn't have anybody that had the technical ability to repair. So that's kind of where we were at.
So we really could, even after we take the 62,000 out for the library, we will have, that will still cover the unassigned deficit of 400 to 450,000 that it's probably going to be. We could get an advance on the property tax and cover our cash flow. Then that would leave the 30,000 a month of reserves. You're just dying to have an opinion, aren't you?
No, I'm listening.
Okay.
I mean, I know what I would do, but usually come with, me, I think Tom's approach is right. First thing we have to do is solve the $200,000 for this fiscal year. And the way I would solve that is I would take Tom's projections for the last quarter, and I would reduce them by 5%, which is $65,000, and that would be the budget for the last quarter. And that would solve $65,000 of the $214,000 deficit. I then would ask the board to take the designated money in the tree fund. Makes no sense to me to borrow money when we have money in a tree fund that's designated, not restricted, it's designated by the board for that use, undesignate it and put it in the money. That's $95,000 more right there. And then I would do nothing and see where we are in the coming months. And if we could not do that, if we don't balance, then I would do the thing with the street aid or Bowie Park Fund or whatever and pay a couple of salaries out of there and make us balance for the year. I would sell the Deer Ridge property, but all of that money that we made from the Deer Ridge property would go into the reserve funds, however we choose to apply them. I would do the special census, but from everything I can read about a special census, it's not going to be an instantaneous mark. I mean, we have to do it, and then it takes a cycle to get it in, everybody has to accept it, and it goes off to wherever, the census people in the sky, and then, so that's probably not a solution. I stand by what I said, and that is if we truly want to get solvent, then the best thing for the cash flow and the city as a whole, from where I see it, is to take the equity in this building and make everything right and go forward on a cash basis. That's what I think. Now, that's for solving for future years, but for this year, I believe that if we took the the first two steps that I said, that we're within $50,000-$60,000 of it, and I'm not giving up on the revenue yet. I think there is some sort of kink in the system, and I think we're still gonna find that our revenue is gonna be better than what you guys are projecting. I don't really have too much basis for that, other than I'm monitoring the state reports. But you cannot tell me our revenue's not gotta go up with the amount of growth that we've had in this city, and we are realizing, 12 to 15% growth, even with the reduced numbers. And so I still think some of the gap will close with revenue. I don't know that it'll all close. But we've worked very hard not to pay the salaries out of those funds. And I don't want to go, that to me would be the last sacrificial lamb. I'd rather take the heat for collapsing the tree fund than to do that. Because, I just don't see us planting $95,000 worth of trees over the next 3 months, and it's a matter of priorities, and right now we have a higher priority than having that money sitting in fund, not making any money and not doing anything for us.
So let me ask you a question about your 5%. Are you saying Tom should reduce expenses by 5%?
Yeah,
So is that doable?
Possibly. I think I had, the highest number I had taken out was 42,000. I had to put a pen and paper to it, but it'd be tough, but yeah.
I guess we could start with the Board of Commissioners, couldn't we?
could if we wanted to do that. We sure could.
It
But-
wouldn't help us a lot.
But you remember, you're only talking about a 3-month period, and there are, I don't want to, Tom's the CFO, and so he has to work with Wayne and the division directors. But I didn't have any trouble coming up with $65,000.
Okay.
And maybe my perspective is wrong, but I just didn't have any trouble with it. It's not, and that's not to say that it's fluff, it's not. We're going to have to make some pretty hard decisions about it. But I think one of the ones, I'll go ahead and pick on the fire department, because maybe Travis is not looking tonight. But the fire department still has, you have that they're gonna spend $17,000 in the last quarter. Okay? Now, I didn't call anybody at the fire department, to ask. Maybe they've already obligated that to something.
Yeah, they've got all those, all the new gear that just went out of date. I think they ordered 11 of the full coat.
But when do we have to pay for that?
I can ask him, see if we can push some of it to the next budget.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're gonna have to try to do, is see, if we could only pay half of it for some of this stuff. And I know you've got some shortfalls that you've got to bring some revenue in to cover that you've already expended, but and you've already accounted for some things, but
My concern about that is we've been doing this for a year now, and I truly don't think that they've spent anything that they could get out of spending. Is at some point of not buying things, it's gonna catch up with us. And then next year is going to be even worse than before, and we're gonna have to reduce next year's budget
well,
for what we spent this year,
Yeah.
under.
I agree, but I also think that necessity is the mother of invention. And I think what we've done is where we are today, Donna, what the managers have said is, this is something I can live without. I think the question now is it something that I can defer? Is it something that I can do something else with? until I can get next year's budget started, that sort of thing. So I don't think the question is necessarily that you're cutting it, it's that you're seeing if your timeline will let you move it a little
Well, our
bit.
timeline would have to let us move it all the way up to February, because we don't have the money from July to November.
No, but that's a bigger problem to solve, and we're not gonna solve that under our current revenue situation. That's something that the board is gonna have to either decide to borrow the money or raise taxes. It's only two ways to close that gap.
So
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm sorry, I just cut you right off.
That to me is, see, I don't even, while I understand we can make the loan on the property tax, it was the property tax all coming in that made us solvent. So if we move that up, then what are we gonna do when it's property tax time and all that property tax comes in, we have to give it away? That doesn't solve the problem, that just delays the problem. Now, we can delay the problem past November of 16, when I'm not up here anymore, hey, I'm good for that. But assuming that I at least participated in where we are today, I'd like to get us back on a track. And to do that, we're going to have to do one of the two things. Now, I like designating the property tax for something. It doesn't make any difference to me what it is, whether we designate it for parks and fund our parks department with it, or whether we designate it for police or fire, or or streets. I don't really care what we designate it for, but I think the public, I know as a voter, I'm a lot more conscious about paying more money if I know where the money goes,
And we could sunset it.
And we sunset it. You're absolutely right.
Could you split the parks, one percentage?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want to with
Another
it.
percentage?
Yeah, you do whatever you want to with it. But the bottom line is that's gonna take more, we could recommend the board consider that, but that's gonna be a major question for them up there. But to get us the $200,000, I don't like using Deer Ridge money for that. I think Deer Ridge, if we're gonna sell Deer Ridge property, we put that money into some reserve account somewhere. I don't know which is the right one, Tom would have to say. But I do think it's time to get rid of anything that we have that's not serving a purpose. And then I think that if the efforts don't work, and we may not be able to make the $65,000 mark, but we can set it up and then see where our outliers are and deal with them, versus where we are right now, where we just, even with, we create an issue where we have to start taking money out of those funds. There's also the drug fund. There's money in the drug fund, and you can pay a police officer out of that. So there is ways to get, those revenues available to us. But we've worked really hard to get those things out of that. And like I said, I know it's not a popular thing to suggest, but the reality is that $95,000 sitting in the tree fund, when we're talking about having a shortfall, that doesn't make sense to me. I just don't understand why we would protect money that we don't have any plans for, it's just designated, and talking about somewhere else, trying to make money somewhere else. I just don't get it. So, but that's my opinion. Y'all may feel more stronger about it. But that's how I would solve it immediately, is Tom's projections would become the initial budget for the less 65,000, and they would just have to decide where the 65,000, 5%. You couldn't 5% across the board because the salaries are pretty set, the insurances are pretty set. You're gonna have to take more from things like uniforms than you already are taking, or, equipment, tools, training. You're gonna have to, like the fire equipment, you're gonna have to take more of that. But that would be my goal, would be for us, and then we ask the board to move the money over from that, and then we wait another month and see what our revenue is. And if we need to make an adjustment, we can make the adjustment then, say, take it out of street aid, but, or we might see that the revenue was up again, maybe not as much as we originally thought, but still up again, and our gap closed a little bit on its own, and we can decide that we want to wait another month. I mean, I just wouldn't take money, I wouldn't reallocate money out of street aid or the drug fund or the park fund to pay salaries unless it was no other alternative. Now, as for next year, I think that we're gonna have to work harder than I hoped on, what our budget is for next year. And, there many options come to mind. Our 3-year plan can become a 4-year plan, and you create $120,000, just like that. Again, I'm not for borrowing against the property tax because this year made it pretty clear that the property tax was our lifesaver in terms of putting our float back on top of the water. And it's a lot easier, I think, for people to when they're given a number up front that says you cannot exceed that number, to come up with a budget than it is to say, what do you want, what's your budget needs, and then you come back and take away from them. I always like the other way. If you're only gonna give me $100,000, don't ask me what I want, because I'm always gonna want more than $100,000 that I can justify. But I think everybody understands what we're in, and I don't want to rain on the parade, but my conversations with Tim White this week have been that the health insurance is going up 20%. So by our first meeting in April, he's going to have the sheets for me, but we've had a lot of high dollar claims, and our health insurance is going up 20%.
Well,
Just a couple of things real quick. Thank you. As far as tax anticipation note, didn't it take us 4, 5, 6 months to get the GAN?
Yes.
It's pretty long, drawn-out deal. And we don't know how the tax anticipation, of course, it's all got to be approved by the comptroller's office. So I'm going to say that if that's a decision that's made, we better allow at least 6 months for it.
we'd have to start now for it to do us any good.
Start pretty soon if that becomes reality. So the next thing is on the tree bank fund. Commissioner, we've already obligated 17,000 of that 97,000.
Well, whatever it is.
Yeah, but for the roadscapes project, but that leaves around 80,000. Yeah, so
Whatever it is.
Okay.
I was just going off Tom's number.
number right there, yeah.
I knew there was a fence and stuff y'all had been talking about, and the roadscapes. So I don't know, but whatever it is, that seems to me that's money that we have access to, that all we have to do is pass a resolution up here to move that money.
Yeah.
And I just, park fund or the drug fund or any of those funds that have restrictions to them, when we designation, with that, or am I missing?
Yes, I concur with that.
So do you want to discuss the debt consolidation?
Yes, I've got several items rolling around, and we've discussed a few of them that I'd like to put together a comprehensive plan that will carry us into the future, well past 2016. One of them is, and I did do some research, and I think we're going to have a hard time getting the state Office of Local Finance to give us a loan on any equity, but we can restructure our debt. As far as everything I've read, and I've researched the TCA 107, I'll have to look at the number, but anyway, it's, everything in there is either for a project or an asset. And I think the way it's looking at is we can't borrow money to put it back in an account. I think is the way the state will look at it, but we can restructure all of our debt, and I'm really excited about this, that they're working on. It would save us $400,000 to $500,000 in cash flow the first year, and between $250,000 and $260,000 throughout. So we would go from a $522,000 debt payment, which right now we're spiked, and as soon as we get through those 5-year things, it'll go back down. But it creates a debt payment payoff that reflects our assets lifetime more accurately, which I think makes a lot more sense than the way we have it structured right now. With that, in conjunction with selling the assets, in conjunction with looking at property tax, in conjunction with looking at the census, and in conjunction with maybe one or two other items, I think we can make a huge difference in our financial position in a short amount of time, and this being the key foundation starting point. So I'm going to pass it around, and I have talked with Larry, I've talked with MTAS, I've talked with, do you have, you can have one.
Does he have one? Mr. Basile, do you have one? Do you have this? Oh,
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
But
I thought I was still.
I think in our long term, and one other thing, I think long term, we stay so focused on the expenditures, and we've got to really focus on how can we open up our cash flow. And I think this addresses that issue. And it also, it puts our, it puts our, the tax burden of the city hall, the tax burden of the ladder truck, the tax burden of the longer term assets. It spreads that burden out over more taxpayers instead of having it on a short 5-year note. And I've had people ask, well, what about the 5-year police cars? And I said, well, we're going to have a 14-year note with a 10-year call provision in it. But, you've got a 14-year note, but you've got several assets that go out past that 10 years. You got City Hall's got a 40-year life. You got a ladder truck that's got a 20 to 25-year life. And then you've got 2 other fire trucks that are well over 10-year lives, well over right past 14-year lives. So they offset that. So I'd like to put together a comprehensive plan. Anything anybody else has to put in there is great. This started really coming together this week, and I was after meeting. What day did we meet? Tuesday.
Yes.
After meeting with John on Tuesday, I feel like we finally made some communication, and I feel like we're in the right direction. We've hired. He's looking at bond counsel, at looking at hopefully having. I told him, I said, we've got to have a resolution. We've got to have everything presented to the board before the budget, or it's just like we had never talked. So they're moving. Hopefully they'll come down here quickly, and we can get going. But I think it's very sound, and the people that I respect, that I've talked to, I think it's a sound move as well.
So this is saying that we will not make a principal payment in all of 2015-16,
Correct.
and then it'll be 259 or thereabouts after that.
Correct.
You got 2017.
I mean, we don't have to make a decision right now. I feel like the main thing I want to get through tonight is how we're gonna get to June 30th. And, you know, if there's nothing we need to present to the board, I mean, maybe we can bring the tree fund account. I mean, do we need to bring that to them now? I don't know. The tree bank, do we?
Well, I think you have to do, for a meeting with them next week, it's really a couple of things have to be discussed. First thing has to be discussed is how y'all gonna work the projection things and what y'all wanna do. You know, Wayne is to. Second part of that is, I think, that would be the time that we would tell them if that's what y'all, if we agree on that, that that's what we think they ought to do. And if the board says, no, we're not gonna do that, then alternatives to automatically go to the places where we can take salaries from and make a deficit of. If do that and then feel comfortable enough to delay it another month or two before we even consider taking salaries, then I think that's what we ought to do. And I think that's just what we tell them. And the future from July 1st on is going to come out in the regular budget process.
Right.
Well, I do want to emphasize one thing, and that's it. We started this year with all of our funds at $940,000. We're going to end the year, in the best-case scenario, with $715,000, and it might be $500,000. So it's not, the long-term decisions have to be made. We're at the place, they have to be made.
Correct.
So,
I agree with you. I'm not saying we don't, I'm just not sure we have to make, I just agree with Tom that we got to deal with the short term, but right on the heels of that, we've got to make some plans for the future, because that's not, the revenue's just not bailing us out like we hoped. I mean, that's what it boils down to, because they've saved money all year long. They've cut where they could cut. But we already know there's going to be increases, you know, and we got some hard decisions to make. We've got health insurance increases, we got a 2% raise, we've got, you know, all of this stuff that factors into from July 1st on. Well, we can't really get to that, I don't think, until we figure out how we're going to get to June the 30th.
right. And he really can't work on the budget until there's some direction.
Right. Right. And so I think we just, and the other thing I think that we recommend to the board is to sell Deer Ridge property. That's an asset that nobody is using, that needs to be put into, not put into paying bills, but put into a reserve fund to that's what I think.
Okay. Recommend liquidating tree bank into unassigned and sell Deer Ridge property. I want to be careful how much further we go past that, simply because I want to have my ducks in a row extremely well. We've got a lot of things going on, but not a lot of defined, we know this is exactly the way it's going to come about, and I don't want to jump in and say something that may or may not.
Well, as we style the workshop is about this fiscal year. It is not about future fiscal years.
Okay.
So we're not, I mean, it's certainly gonna, the thoughts are gonna beg those questions, but we're certainly not, that's not the focus as we advertised it. We focused the advertisement on both this one and the next one was, we were gonna figure out what to do about this fiscal year, this one, and then we were gonna tell the board about it and get some input next one, and then it's on the budget, I mean, it's on the April 2nd agenda for the regular board in case we have to pass something.
Right.
So,
And then the rest of this will come out as we present the budget.
right.
So can you meet with your directors between now and Tuesday night? Are we still gonna have the workshop Tuesday night?
I think we should, yes.
And y'all see if you can come up with 65,000?
I got possibly, I mean, we'll see who, I know Travis is out of town tomorrow. I'm leaving early. He's at a funeral. I've got a funeral to go to. I'd give me Monday and Tuesday, maybe. I can do my best.
Okay.
Well, and I know y'all's process has been to meet with them, but it may reach the
I
point
can
that,
just email him. Say,
yeah,
hey.
you just tell them, tell me why I can't have $2,000 out of your uniform, $2,000 additional dollars out of your uniform budget, or whatever it is that you need to make that money up. And like I said, it doesn't have to be 65,000, it could be 42,000, but then you got $23,000 else that's gotta come, so, when I was looking at your numbers, I was shooting for that 214, and I'm thinking that of the 214, we're really gonna get maybe another $30,000 revenue positive. Now, that's based upon what, and I've looked at it 60 and 90 days from the state monies. And so if that's the case, if we continue to see that, and that's the case, then we're really only talking about 185,000. And I was thinking, well, there's 95 from from the tree, that's 90. And then we're down to 60, and maybe we only have to take one salary out of street aid, or one salary, or maybe somebody in town will drop $25,000 on us.
That'd be nice.
But
You say we can pay a salary out of the drug fund?
you can pay a police officer salary out of the drug
Police
fund.
officer, okay.
Yeah, you could pay, that's all Shane has done. You could pay Shane's salary without any problem. But you still get into the same problem. If we really need that money, it's the never-ending cycle. If we let the drug fund build up and we use that for the equipment, then in out years, things like police cars and radio equipment, stuff like that, can be bought from the drug fund, and we don't have to put that into the general budget, which was, or we supplement it, but we don't have to. So it's really a catch-22, and Donna was very much right, in my opinion, that we can do that, but we should be toward the end. I mean, that should be like a last resort. And I know we first got out of the Bowie Fund doing that because there were a couple of years in there where they took about $30,000 a year out and paid salaries out that. So I know we can do that, I just don't want to do that. And then the same way with street aid, we moved to get street aid out of it. So, and the drug fund, I think they've done that before, but they don't, it's better used for equipment. That's how we can get top-notch equipment, is from that fund. Something we can get something back on.
So one more question. The auditors had a blurb in the audit that said we should not have designated funds we didn't have, or something to that effect, for the school facilities tax. So is that going to ding us again? Or it wasn't important, or what's your take on that?
No, I told you my take at the very beginning of this meeting, how I felt about we need all the monies in the funds that where they're supposed to be. And I don't remember anything on the audit saying that, but I go back and read it and see, but I do know, it needs to be there. I mean, we're under contract for it to be there.
Right. So we probably need to determine if that is something we have to do. Or that was just a note that they put in there to cover themselves, I don't know.
Well, it's just something we have to do. It's something we have to do, but we don't have to do it immediately.
I mean, we're gonna have,
The
we're gonna
state-
be in the same situation this year. We're gonna,
Right, but we enacted a plan beginning July 1st that right now is the law. That part of our budget is $30,000 a month going toward the repayment of that, and that complies us with the state comptroller's guidance in this area.
okay,
That when the reserve funds have to be depleted, you need to, each municipality has to establish a way to repay those that is a firm type way, and we've got that. That's really, we could reduce the amount, but we cannot not have the amount. We are going to have I've been calling it the replenish tax, but we're gonna have to have that money, some monies, a substantial amount of monies. I think at least $20,000 if we come off the 30, but I'd like to see us budget for the 30. And because that is the surest fire way. I think the refinancing is great. If we can't borrow to get equity out, because I see that as a sum zero, some people don't, but I see that as a sum zero situation. You're taking equity in property and you're making equity in cash. But if we can't do that, then creating a better cash flow by refinancing is certainly a viable option that I would want to consider. But that doesn't solve our replenish funds. That doesn't solve our funds. The only way to do that is for us to stick with the plan that we've already put in place. And that is that we're going to put $30,000 a month up for 3 years, and that's your $1 million. And so we're going to have to make minor adjustments as we go along based on our cash flow, but that was the plan we came up with. That's the plan we enacted, and sort of like taking money out of these funds to pay salaries, I think that's the last thing that I could consider, because I see that as credibility of the board. I mean, we said we were going to do that. We need to do that. And so if we can improve our cash flow by refinancing, which makes the other end, the actual budget process, easier on Mr. Hall and his staff, then yes, we do that. But we start out with that replenish tax, because that's how we're going to get the reserve back in there. As long as we are doing that, we will be in compliance with the controller's directive. The auditors will be required to call to the fact what the situation is. So technically, yes, they will ding us. But management's response to that is, we instituted this plan to replenish. We have transferred the money every month. You know, we get it. We're working as fast as we can toward it. So I think we would be okay. That's a long way of saying that. I apologize for the length of that response, but.
okay. Do you have any other comments, Brian?
No, I'm good at the moment with everything you're saying. That was my question to Mr. Hall, is, you know, the timeframe, what we're talking about. So when he came up with the ideas of now, that's what we need to worry about, is the next 3 months, and then the budget process will get us into next year.
And I would like to email y'all as soon as I get what I feel like is a viable, doable option, email it to you and get everybody's input on it. And because once it starts, it's going to move fast. Probably these next few weeks are going to just kind of really fly by. And so I'll just email. We'll do some correspondence that way before our next meeting.
No, we really will only have one more month before we need directions from the board on how to handle the budget for next year. But,
I did turn that in to be on this week's agenda.
Okay.
So that should come up, and we should have all that. It should have gone on last week's, and I just didn't get it done.
you have anything else?
Oh, no, ma'am. No.
Oh.
No, I just, I just want to tell y'all, I know everybody, it's a totally different, way to look at it this year and last year. And I've looked at everything for over a year, and, I really feel like we're in a position to make some decisions, present some opportunities for the board to make some decisions that can put us on the fast track to being in a really good spot, and I'm excited about that. And our revenue will eventually catch up, but it's just right now, you know, you look at how much we have absorbed, and it's pretty incredible. So I think I just want to tell everybody thanks for all the input and all the help, and I really feel like as this comes out, I'm looking forward to seeing if y'all is as excited as I am, because there's been times where I'm like, is there a way? Is there a way out? So I think better days are ahead.
Ms. Donna, I would like to add that all of our directors are doing a great job trying to help us out. When they do come to us with a need, it is a need, it's not a want. And I think that's been critical as to how well that we've done with expenditures. You know, maybe it's Tom and I's approach on it, but that's just the way that and the directors are following suit with us. So I'd just like to praise them for helping us out too. Thank you.
Okay, so how are we going to proceed Tuesday night?
I think synopsis of situation, which the document that's to me is very easy to understand and very that we try to keep them focused, keep the board focused on what the priority of solving this fiscal year before we worry about next fiscal year. And then we just say, this is what these are the actions that we recommend in this order, because the order that you do them is important. These are the actions that we recommend to get us through the remaining of the fiscal year. Those actions being to, Tom to basically come up with a 3-month budget, and then to move the tree fund money, if, like I said, if y'all agree with that, and then wait another 30 days or another cycle, another month, to see if what the revenue shows another month. And then we will have to look at, you know, transferring some money in from one of those restricted funds to pay a salary to get us to the balance, get us to the even.
Now, do we need to put the Deer Ridge property up there?
And then the fourth item would be to go ahead and market the Deer Ridge property. However, that money is not to be used unless the board so designates. The board could say, use it for current year expenses. You know, don't touch the tree fund, use that money. If that's what they say, you know, they can pass that 4-1. But I think the best use of that Deer Ridge money is to put the money directly toward one of those shortfalls in our reserve accounts. And I also think that goes to your question about the auditors. That shows a real concerted effort for us to try to do something in a positive way to make that whole.
Okay.
And so those, and that's where I would limit the conversation, all this about the restructuring of our debt and the insurance and the merit raises. We're not ready to discuss that yet. We haven't put that to a pencil. I mean, I've done some chicken scratch, you know, based upon every time we determine what we think our revenue will be, you know, our general operating revenue, without transfers in or transfers out. just the general operating revenue, then I run my numbers again to see what the bottom line of how much money he would have to run the city. Because that's what it really boils down to. And so, that's what the budget will have to be made off of. And it's, so, but we don't, it's from that the 2%, any increases we would have to health insurance, and we have to examine the impact of that because, say, for instance, we suspended the 2%, but we couldn't give any more toward the insurance, but the insurance went up 20%. So to an employee takes a double whammy. The insurance goes up, but I don't get a raise. So that's like a pay cut. And that's gonna be tough. And the property tax issue. I know that one of my fellow commissioners has stated he won't vote for that. That's fine, that's his prerogative, but, I don't see how the long-term future of the city, we can continue to go the other way. The growth, it's a nice concept, and I believed it for some time, and I believe it's been pretty good. However, it still hasn't produced enough revenue for us to manage our growth. We have got to, and every other place around us has done this. We've held the line, well, we've actually reduced the line over the last 8 years. But the bottom line is we cannot, we can't go in that, we certainly can't go in that trend, and I'm not sure that we can continue to provide decent city services if we don't do that, if we don't do something. But that's just my opinion, Others have to weigh in on that. But that's not a discussion we need Tuesday night. We don't need that discussion Tuesday night.
No.
That's going to be, when we get our act together about what we think the budget ought to be and how we think we ought to fund it, that's when we have that discussion.
Any other discussion?
Do you want to take the lead Tuesday night? Would you like me to?
I will. I'll
Okay.
work up something and send it out to everybody, and you can adjust it
Okay.
or whatever.
Yeah, just to let you know, I won't be able to make Tuesday. It's at work, so we'll be there till 7 or 8 o'clock or later, so, Tuesday will for me, unfortunately.
Well, you can record it on Channel 19. if you want
I'll
to.
watch the recorded thing. Work is starting to take a lot of
Tell you when you get on these committees and stuff that work doesn't matter, family, work, television
Well,
shows,
yeah,
Kentucky basketball, you don't get to see any of that stuff.
They didn't
You
tell me
spend
that,
your
but
time up here.
I found out real quick that that's the case, but yeah, work, fortunately, it pays my bills, that will come first, I guess, so. That's where I'll be Tuesday.
I don't know if we need a motion to adjourn, or we just adjourn.
Well, you can just, everybody comfortable, are we all comfortable with that course of action and how that's how we would solve it?
Yeah. Thanks, I agree.
Y'all didn't say much about my idea about the tree fund, did you? I expect that, but I
If,
got big
if you can handle the firestorm, we'll let you.
Well, you give me a better solution. I used to, when you get to these situations where you have to make a decision, you give me a better solution. Is it better to, borrow money than to pay it out of money that you already have? No, because what we're trying to do is refinance our long-term debt, so why would we want more short-term debt? Is it better to take the money out of the Bowie Park Fund or the tree fund? Well, neither are popular decisions, but my guess is there's gonna be a lot more pushback on taking it out of the park fund than there is out of the tree fund. Is it, the same way with streets? Would you rather do potholes, or would you rather pay salary for people to tell you that, if we had some pothole money, we'd come fix it? It's like we don't, when you weigh the options, to me, it always comes out that while unpopular, that is something that is available to us. And who's to say that if our long-term plans work out right, then, you know, putting that money back is nothing. We have a need right now. So, yeah, I knew it wasn't gonna be popular when I suggested it, but I couldn't come up, I can't tell him to cut $140,000 from his budget. He doesn't have it. And I'm still hopeful that the beloved state will give us that money they're hiding.
Now, all this time, that's been Tom's position, and now it's just switched over to you.
Well, you know, we think it's there on purpose. But I talked to my guy at the state again, who wants to remain anonymous. But he says that typically it is a process because it runs through the county. So, and all of the state's numbers indicate that they're running a solid 10% in well, we get that, but we get it on a per capita basis. But even that, we should be seeing increases in the state side as well, because they got an increase. It won't be as big an increase as ones directly to us. But then the part that comes to the county, they're showing local sales tax, local and county sales tax is being up around, on average, around 8%. So we ought to be seeing 8% across the board. And some months we've seen as much as 12, 15%. Some months we've seen none.
Right.
And so it's like, why? What happened during that month, or, you know, whatever? So I don't know how you do this, Tom, but I think we need to sit down with the people in the flow process, have somebody walk us through so we can verify our numbers.
I do need to order, I can order a status report once a year, which shows everybody that, now this is for our local sales tax that goes to the county. Everybody that's on the property, on the sales tax roll, and what they have.
I think that would be real helpful for next year, us to have more definite information, because definitely want to start with what we actually brought in this year. Start with what we actually brought in this year. There's never been a decrease. So if we are safe in that if we build a budget on what we brought in this year, transfer ins, just build a budget on general revenue, we will be safe. We will not be back in this position. That's our issue has been that our predictions, it's like my bracket in the NCAA. You know, I got one chance, and that's it.
It's done, we're moving forward.
Second game.
Did they win?
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying, the second game of the tournament, my bracket was gone.
Yeah, they didn't even take me the second game.
Second game, it was-
My upsets got upset. Later on upsets.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. We'll have the meeting Tuesday night at 6.
6, and it's a workshop. Anybody wants to know the difference, it will not be